So great. Okay, so welcome everyone. Very pleased to be introducing the first webinar of the year. We've got quite a packed agenda that we'll email out afterwards on kind of future webinars. But for now, we're going to be getting started with the Hot Uganda team. So Jeffrey, dear Gracias, Shamila, Alan and Rupert, who are going to share their experiences doing community mapping in refugee settlements in Uganda. So if anyone has questions, please feel free just to pop them into the chat and I'll monitor that and raise them at the end. Or at the end, we'll have a live discussion time for people who want to kind of come off mute and participate in any discussion. So I'm going to hand over now to, I think, Rupert to get started.
Hi everyone. So what I should do first is introduce our team to you. We basically have an operational project here in Uganda. So we're the Ugandan country team. We're composed of a core team and then field team leaders as well. So I'm sort of wanting to see that there's a monitor. Thank you. There's a monitor. I'm Rupert. Hi. These guys are all our team. So Geoffrey is a GIS trainer and also community programs assistant and general stalwart. Alan is one of our mapping supervisors. Becca, Lawrence, Deo, Harriet, Michael are all field team and remote mappers. So Harriet and Michael are field team leaders. Harriet is from one of our areas where we've done some very significant mapping for the refugee response in collaboration with the UNHCR in northern Uganda. So there we have a lot of South Sudanese refugees and also refugees from the DRC, which borders that district on one side as well, near enough, and a lot of refugees go there. So I'll get into the seminar, but please, when we come to the end, I'll try and quickly go through my questions, and then as soon as I'm done, please do chip in. But what we'll do is I'll try and intersperse it with comments from people who have specifically been doing the stuff that I'm talking about. How do I get into the presentation? Okay, so 1 second. Okay. Okay. So yeah, this is our team up above. We have several projects in Uganda. This has been the main one over the last year and a half or so. And over that time it launched this relationship between the settlement dwellers and the host community dwellers, and what our project is to make sure that we represent both the refugee community and the hosting community in Uganda. What we're doing here, of course, is creating a map. The map is getting used for coordination across the refugee response. But the other thing we're doing, as well as making the map good, the other half of our capacity is spent on making sure we train people to use it. And a couple of the guys who are with us today are new OSM members who've come into the community over the last year and have gone from strength to strength, becoming experts and then being able to deploy in whole new areas automatically, remotely. So Uganda, we have 1.5 million nearly refugees here. It's Africa's biggest hosting country. Has a very good policy here. And the idea is that refugees can come here and have a plot of land. So it's not packed like Calais or other refugee camps where people are stuffed in. People are given land to try and become self-sufficient. Now, the thing about this is that it started as a small project that was a pilot, and we've gone on to respond to this massive influx that happened about a year ago of another, 500,000 people coming in. And it's become a kind of one of the more key tools in the coordination of the response. So we've managed to do this on very little funding, and for this, I want to kind of take my hat off to the team for all of the tight, efficient, and brilliant work that's happened over that year. It's not been an easy year, but we've all learned so much and we've done such a lot, and I'll take you through some of the things. One of the projects, as well as actually mapping, is we work also with the community of NGOs that are here, and we try and get their data that from old projects de-siloed and into OSM, and we also train those guys in the environment that we train everybody else to be able to both learn how to access OpenStreetMap, but also contribute that data and do more OpenStreetMap projects within their NGO as part of the response. This is how Uganda kind of looks, and these are the refugee settlements. So the borders in the north, this is South Sudan in the north, and then this is Congo in the west. So you can see some of these settlements date way back to the 1950s, and they've had different refugee populations. So Naki Valley has 10 different nationalities in it. Very ethnically interesting. And also, of course, the main thing is to get everybody working together. I think, and I hope that everybody gets how Missing Maps HOT works in this kind of context where you guys and we guys are equally remote mapping and field mapping. We get it onto OSM and we use devices to be able to field map with it and print maps out and contribute. So that reciprocation. So the main thing for us is that, and here's a mapathon of actually in MSF, where we're seeing the kind of tools that I think most of us are familiar with, using that background imagery to create the data layer that we can then download on our smartphones as Osmand or Maps.me and get working in the field. We use ODK here to take surveys because we're taking a standard survey, and the standardization has been collaborated with UNHCR for the refugee context. Now, other projects, we try to stick with that basic health factors, how many doctors are in a health center, how many nurses, how much the capacity is. Then we can look at whether they're going to get overwhelmed or even already are. The villages, we find out where they refer people to, how many people live there and exactly where they are, and how their basic kind of demographic is. For water and sanitation, hygiene, WASH, we're looking at boreholes. We're also looking at informal stuff, and this is where the local community, people like the guys that you have just been introduced to, Michael, who is from South Sudan and is living as a refugee in Mvepi, and well, actually, yeah, in a camp that's part of Mvepi, and Harriet, who comes from the area nearby. So their knowledge is absolutely essential, and they give us this feedback over WhatsApp. We run the whole operation through a WhatsApp group, and we can send new surveys, and we can receive information and reports, and we can send position. If there's any problem, then Alan or Shamila or another operations person can get to them by just getting directions to, getting a phone to them, getting a new survey to them. We're also collecting all the schools, all of the social amenities, so police stations, playgrounds, and all community centres, and cash-based interventions. That's CBI. So that means mobile money, which is what we use here in Uganda to pay people. Now, some people might not be familiar with mobile money, but you basically can use an SMS service to exchange airtime for money and cash it in locally and pay in locally. Once we see the reports come in, we pay the guys, and we can check that their reports are good. And if they need any help, we can send it to them too, or we can turn up there. So what we're getting is community witness data. It's referenced with the NGO data that I mentioned earlier on. We're training NGO people in our trainings as well. And we're getting this interaction. So Harriet and Michael might well work together in a refugee or a host district. The different communities get to understand how each other operate by actually exploring. And I don't know, you can ask these guys about that later, but I think they seem to enjoy it. Although, of course, it's hard work and the climate is punishing. So we want to hand this over to these guys, skill people to keep using OSM and bring them all into the community. And we change our questions according to their feedback. So we get to find out what they want, as well as having this standard tagging system. So that tagging system has been used around the world. Here in Uganda, in refugee settlement environments, and we're pushing for that to continue so that it becomes the standard. That's the basic metrics for all of those different public amenities, so that we can assess what community needs are, where they're really lacking. So here, as you see, refugees can work here and they can be part of the system. So what we do is we round people up and we bring them into one space. We ask for people with smartphones. It's surprising how many people in sub-Saharan Africa do have smartphones. We generally find there's at least one per community, although NetHope are very generous in supporting where we're lacking, and we place smartphones in communities that need them. But what we really want is for communities to continue after we've left, so it's good for them to have their own device. We're creating some kind of standard here that's also interfaced with government, and there's a possibility, because we also have projects training government at local level in these trainings, and you'll see some photos of this kind of stuff you're looking at here. There are local district people involved in this training. There are local refugee population, and there are local host community and NGO technicians, M&E officers. So that's monitoring and evaluation, because this is a great way to look at whether your NGO intervention is performing as it should, whether the money is arriving on the ground as it should do. So it's really, really great from that point of view when we survey. What we do is we take your map of or all of the remote mappers' work from around the world, and we bring it onto a basic map. We do a map orientation, and then we train in the mobile tools with the selection of those trained people, and we get them into a WhatsApp group. So the WhatsApp group becomes the way that we coordinate the whole operation. Unfortunately, Deo isn't here right now because I've left him in a Ministry of Health Ebola preparedness meeting. I'm hoping that he'll come in. He's been the operations manager for this project. And it'd be nice if he turns up later to have a couple of words. What we do is we use this ODK form that you can see in the top left, and we ask questions, but sometimes the questions aren't termed in the right way. So because of the WhatsApp group, people can come back to us and say, we don't use this term block in a refugee camp. We use tank because it's a water tank. Then we can change the questions and get them to download a new form. So we have a very fast kind of turnaround, and we can have them resurveying in the right ways that's relevant to the local community within an hour, because we just change that form and get them to download a new one. And we send airtime to them, so that using that mobile money system so they can download it. Now, the trick here, they're dispersed refugees. So what we also use is the local boda riders. These are motorcycle riders you can find almost everywhere in the countries I know in Africa. They're basically a local, very localized taxi service. What they have is the local knowledge. So we tap into their local knowledge, and we assign one of those to each of our surveyors, and that surveyor manages them, and we send money through the surveyor to them at the end of each day. They help us to not duplicate when we're doing the work. You can see them here updating a map that we've given our surveyors, telling them where to go, figuring out so that where the roads are going to pass, so that they go in the right direction, and they go everywhere. This is the other thing about what we're doing here. No other NGO has gone everywhere in the environment. We often get comments, why are you here? We've never seen an NGO here before, because the whole point is we get every single place, informal or formal, and sometimes we need to get a motorbike onto a canoe. We recharge the phones from the motorbikes. It's our mobile infrastructure. And from this data, we're creating maps that get pushed out to all the different NGOs through the UNHCR, who's running coordinating the refugee response here. These are the wash facilities. Water is very, very important here, the most important sector almost, because it's a very precarious one and even depends on water. So this is a map of the wash facilities. We can make maps of all the different health facilities or schools, and we can also make maps that put population close to those places or far away, and we can campaign for new interventions that can solve those issues. And this is really the only way to see the data is on a map, so it's kind of important. Here's a quick slide of inside and outside settlement. So we have kind of contaminated water issues outside settlement. We will map this as a water intervention and we'll show it to these guys. They don't know it's there because, as I say, no other NGO has gone into these informal settings. And inside a settlement, they dry out because everybody's using the ones that show on the formal maps. So this is really important that we show what other water sources are there, but also show whether there are problems. Here's one of Harriet's WhatsApp reports, actually. She's telling us how many points she's surveyed, and she's also giving us some information about the local village and how it is. I'd like you to speak to Harriet, if you can, about this later. I'm going to take you forward, but what we also do with the maps, and I'm going to pull Alan in to tell you about this very quickly. Alan, can you quickly explain the taking the maps back to the district project and how it started through the fact we're using teachers?
Hello everyone, I'm Alan. So after collecting the data, what we do is we make the maps, the static maps, and after making them in the office, we get to print these maps, and then we go back to the leaders within the given settlements to the lowest level of administration.
They look like
whereby we're able to teach them about the maps and how they're going to be able to use them. Then in case there are some, say, missing information, they're able to show it to us that this has been missed out, this has been missed out. Then we're able to use the community that we use to collect the data to be able to correct that. We print the final copy of the maps with community space whereby everyone in the community can be able to access and be able to read the maps. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Alan. So we get the local district involved. This Logiri sub-county is a local government district. I'm noticing that you're not picking up great video, and I'm hoping you're still with us. Again, this is the next slide where we're in the schools. And this is a potential career path, of course, for local school children to, if they engage with OpenStreetMap and HOT and all of our OSM Wiki, they can actually become world-class GIS people, especially being connected with the network that we all are as a movement around the world. So it's kind of, we've talked to the national curriculum about including it, and we hope that that will come about. This next slide is one of the first slides that, the first maps that we put together of all the water points that don't work in one of the survey areas. And of course, they're showing in red here on an interactive map. As soon as you put that data on OpenStreetMap, people really pay attention because they contest it. And the contestation is really important because people then get involved. Nobody could believe from the UNHCR that this many water facilities were not working, but this is 3,500 facilities, so you can't argue with 3,500 people telling you this truth. On the top left, you see an informal water point. It's a dried out riverbed. We're collecting on those as well as the very formal boreholes and even tanks that are in communities so that you can get a proper picture of where to put a new borehole, because there might be lots of wells in that area. Sorry, we've got some noise. There might be a lot of wells in that area and they're not, and you wouldn't want to put a borehole where there's actually loads of unrecorded water. The other thing that we have a problem with is settlement addressing. We don't know, well, we kind of do now, but the UNHCR haven't known how many refugees are there and actually where they are. So we have been using a Ramani Huria, Tanzania developed line draw tool to do both plots and walk the boundaries of individual plots, which we can put people's addresses on if we want to, and this is in collaboration with the Ministry of Lands here. We can also look at forest depletion. I touched on this, what I called an environmental time bomb. These communities are dependent on forest. If the forest disappears, they don't have wood. If they don't have wood, they can't boil water or cook. If they can't boil water, they can't sanitize anything. So disease will break out. So disease breaking out on a local level would be fine, but think of 1.5 million people who are very quickly running out of the capacity to sterilize anything. And suddenly it becomes quite frightening. So it's very important to plot what's there and to watch how it's depleting and keep replanting so that basically this self-sufficient communities can stay alive. Our maps go on to the UNHCR portal, and this is open, so you can go to here if you want to, and we can send you links. And you can look at this response in the bigger picture, and you can see some of our inputs. You can see schools without sanitation. We do have something like 53 schools in Arua and Yumbe without any toilets in them, for instance. We have a lot of other stuff to do with distances to schools, and we can use the data for all sorts of interactions. And then basically back to trainings and how we train people together. I'm going to breeze through fast. The way that we use the data, for those who are interested, we take 3 tiers of data. We take the entire data set, we split off what's personal or what's sensitive, and we keep that secure.
Good afternoon.
Hello. We take the OpenStreetMap data, which is public, and we upload that to OpenStreetMap. And we take the humanitarian demographic data and we keep that on HDX, which is Humanitarian Data Exchange. So I've just come from this meeting I mentioned. This motorcycle mapping technique developed from our work in the West Africa Ebola campaign. We now have an Ebola threat here, and we don't know where all the facilities are and what their capacity. Put their cases on the map, then we can go through that. I just want to check, do we have an internet connection?
Hi, Rupert, yeah, we can hear you, but I think it might be better if you turn off the video and keep the screen share.
Okay, all right, I'll do that. We're just seeing to that now.
I think I just did it for you, so you're good to continue.
Okay. Basically, that's okay. I mean, whatever you've got there shows you what I did want to do is show you a couple of our other projects. We have a partnership with Map Uganda here. We have various partnerships with other OSM communities as well. And through that project, we jointly train UBOS, which is Uganda Bureau of Statistics. They're hoping in the next census that they will use OpenStreetMap to do their national census. We've been working with that, which would be amazing. It would be the first time that's ever been done in the world. And we're working towards that. The project that we've had with them has involved getting their data from the census 4 years ago, upgrading it, updating it, and introducing them to use OpenStreetMap to help them with both their verifying their data, but also recollecting for the census. As I mentioned earlier on, we've also been working with Ministry of Lands to help them because they don't have a very good recording system and they're non-digital essentially. And we're also working with the Office of the Prime Minister here and training those guys because they're involved in both disaster risk management and refugee response. So this was a slide of us just in offices with those guys. And the next slide you can't see, I'm afraid, is of us mapping for flood risk with Map Uganda mapping for flood risk with us kind of in technical and operational support with them. Geoffrey, can you quickly say a couple of words about this?
Yes, thank you, Rupert. So there is a project that's going on all over Africa, which is Open Cities, which is a collaboration with the World Bank through the GFDDR. And Uganda is one of the participating countries. So through this program, we have been mapping the flood-prone areas of Kampala and doing this partnership with KCCA, which is the Kampala Capital City Authority, and also the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, and also officials from the Office of the Prime Minister who are responsible for disaster preparedness. So it's a good program, and most especially because it is also part of the local OSM community is taking part. So HOT is collaborating with MAP Uganda, which is a local OSM community, to do this project.
Thanks, Geoffrey. We also in Uganda have various other groups, but I think I'm going to stop here. Seeing as the slides can't be seen, I'm sure that you can share the slides and we can work that out online afterwards. But what I was thinking was we perhaps try and do the program. Alan's told you a little bit about the OSM in schools. But it would be really nice to, first of all, ask if there are any questions on what we have just been showing you guys.
So there was one in the chat, which I'm just going to read out, which is from Douglas. Other people, please feel free to kind of chime in either in the chat or come off mute and ask your questions. So this one was from Douglas, and it says, are you able to meet the demand for maps, training and skills from the refugees and communities with the available tools and devices from HOT?
So thanks for that, Douglas. Yeah, we struggle with this, but what we've had is support from NetHope. So we have a number of computers, of laptops, and we have a number of phones. So we use that resource and we use that for training. So far we've been okay in terms of training, but the big question for us now is sustainability. How we keep the community. What we've had is funding to be able to pay a stipend to these guys. What we're now doing is the refugee response is going into a state of development now. Of course, OpenStreetMap is perfect for this. We can quickly respond, but also we can develop communities. So right now we have a couple of projects ongoing into the future, which are to do with that. One is to do with, a partnership with the UNDP about disaster risk management. And from this, what we're really looking for is the next stage. And as you rightly kind of hint, Douglas, what we're looking for is incentivization for people to do this off their own bat and see the benefits for themselves, and how to weave it into a livelihood that can support them and sustain them once we're out of here. So this is where we support and train local government and community, so that local government can campaign to get more funding to support local community who need to be able to use this in conjunction with them. And this is why we support as many communities as we can here who are going to remain here over the long term. But the point of this is that we're also trying to feed OpenStreetMap into the way NGOs work and government works. So my project at country level is spending a lot of time making it clear to people that they can administrate through OpenStreetMap. As soon as the country adopts a standard of OpenStreetMap, which is my dream, and luckily the dream of, to a certain extent, the UBOS contingent, then we will be in a situation where community can have their own voice on their own terms, but it can get represented to governing authorities. So yeah, we're working on it. What we most of all want to do is have a scheme where people can earn phones as they map. That might be one middle ground for how to create the capacity of phones in the communities. And we would like to try and launch as many projects as we can around this. On the program, we've got a couple of pointers. If there are more questions, we can go there, or if there are...
There is, just in the chat, another question from Unique Mappers team in Nigeria saying, do you collect field data from the camps, and what type and tool is that?
Great, thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, thanks for that question, Nigeria. Yes, we do, ODK, quickly. So in the field, we're using ODK to collect data because it's standardized, mentioned earlier on. It's standardized, and we're completely dependent on all these maps being remote mapped first, and then we're going in and we're tagging them, and we have it's very important for us to have a system that kind of has an institutional approval in Uganda. So UNHCR are running the response in the refugee camps, and we're lucky enough to have a relationship with them that is troublesome because we're innovative, but it's there, and we have collaboration with them. And the tools, in terms of the data collection tools, models that we have, are workshop with UNHCR, and we're also training UNHCR to be able to keep sustaining this. So the other thing that we use is Osmand. We find Osmand better than Maps.me in some ways because you can use a tracker and you have a broader possibility of transferring any data sets that might be troublesome. You can bring them back into Osmand as GPX points, and you can go to those points and resurvey or identify people. I should say that every single point we collect a phone number on. So suddenly we have an infrastructure of phone numbers of thousands and thousands of people we can call back because we've done this initial legwork and ask more questions. But the tools we use are the basic tools about health, water, sanitation, education, and other social amenities. So we're very, very eager to share these and to support anyone else trying to do something similar. Hope that answers the question. Okay, please do come in if it doesn't. What's on our program of?
I had another question actually. Obviously aware, like some people in the room on your side have got really significant experience in OSM and seen it change. I think Jeffrey probably being the person in the room who's been working in OSM in Uganda for the longest. So I was wondering, Jeffrey, if you could comment maybe on how you've seen OSM change in Uganda kind of over that time. So not necessarily a hot specific question, just a general question about your experience there.
Thank you so much for that question, Rebecca. So OpenStreetMap, you know, is a community. So as long as we are doing the mapping here in Uganda, it's also very important to grow the community. And I can say Uganda is one of the countries where at least the OSM community has been growing steadily. And actually, last year, in 2017, we're able to host the first set of the Map Africa here in Kampala, which was a success. So that shows also that the OSM community in Uganda has been growing steadily. But the question, I think, is how has it been growing? So it has been growing a lot through universities, where especially through the Mappers chapters. So some of the people who are now working with Hot Uganda, like Shamila and Alan, were previously youth mappers, and they've been able to join our team. And so that shows that the work that Hot is doing here is also helping the local OSM, community of OSM grow, which is very important. And of course, also have like our community mapping volunteers who are also now getting integrated into the community. So they help collect the data, but also they are trained in using these tools, collecting data with either OpenMapKit or with ODK, clean it up and put it into OSM. And I think what is also key is also data quality. That's also the other thing we're trying to emphasize, because if you're going to talk to government to be able to trust OSM data, NGOs to use OSM data, it has to be good enough. So that's the other thing that really matters, data quality, and we always emphasize that part of our work here.
Geoffrey's just touched on that because I think Johannes has asked a question, how do we address issues of language? I'm thinking that Harriet might be able to tell us something about this. So I'm going to ask Harriet. Harriet's one of our field team leaders who's multilingual, as are most of our field guys. So Harriet, this is Harriet from Arua. So Harriet, we're asking about language, but how do we cope with language and a different ODK and...
Okay, thank you very much. Already known me. As concerns language barriers, we have different categories of people we're working with. We have refugees among us. We recruited them, we're working with them. When we get to people and we don't understand the language, they always come and help us. And sometimes we also get people who translate, the translators around, they help us and translate the language to us that we understand it so well. So refugees are there. They know the language, at least they know Arabic, they know Kakwa, they know all the basic languages because all the refugees in the settlements.
How about this? I'm saying the small baula.
The mushroom.
They're for mushroom.
Which ones?
The small baula plus like a small saucepan like covered on top.
Oh, I think that someone is off mute who shouldn't be, so I'm just going to mute them. Please carry on.
The forms, the translate.
Yeah, something else apart from the language barriers, the data collectors also are refugees. We have refugees. One of them is here with me. He's called Michael Yani. I've been working with him in the field, collecting data together. Some of them have not come around. They are still in the field. But anytime we have field work, we shall conduct them and work with them.
So you speak 4 or 5 languages, Harriet?
I speak about 4 languages.
And
yes.
Michael, you speak how many, you say?
I can speak also 3 languages.
So Michael can speak what? Aqua, English, Arabic?
Arabic, I can speak Lugara now.
Lubara,
Yes.
Lubara,
Yes.
and Kiswahili.
Kiswahili.
So we also translate our forms in ODK, and when we're going into an area where we have multi-languages, then I just wanted to add that we also use ODK use the language options that are available in ODK, and we write our forms with the other questions. So yeah, what I was going to say, and Geoffrey touched on this, challenges when it comes to the government, which I'll perhaps answer. That's one of my biggest issues. People don't know what open means. People think open source means that it's open to everyone and everyone can see your data and everybody can know all of the private data that certain partners might need to collect. Of course, protection, what they call protection in the humanitarian lexicon, all about making sure that females and children and different marginalized groups are safe. Making sure that you can't mine the data is absolutely at the top of the agenda. I spend a lot of time telling them that open means that you have complete control yourself. And that's my main opening gambit with that. And then from there on, I show them how we split the data so that they have complete control and they have their own login. And I have to sometimes spend as little time as I can getting them over the open source digital barrier. So I mean, it's an incredible step a leap to come over that barrier and understand what open source is if you have no idea. That's a huge, huge hurdle for me every time I'm in a meeting. And so we make sure that we attend very much to that as a kind of priority discussion right at the start. So, yeah, and that leads us on to security. So you're in northeast Nigeria, and I know that there's a strong OSM community evolving in Nigeria. So, okay, I'm going to just go to the second question from northeast Nigeria. What kind of support should one expect from you who intends replicating what you're doing in Uganda somewhere else? The most important thing is we document everything that we've got. So we have a very clear structure of approach. And so that documentation is open and available on a drive. We can make that open to everybody on request. We just need to check, of course, that we don't have personal data that we're sharing, but everything we can, we're evolving into the OSM wiki that we're building. and we really welcome people getting in touch and asking for support. We can direct you towards the people that can give you that support, and we're very, very happy to do our very best to support you. This is one of the main remits of the OSM Africa agenda, is to support across Africa from the blueprint that we're trying to create here. Now, making order out of chaos is a very important thing for us here in Uganda, especially when there are so many NGOs here and there are so many questions around what is hot. It's a brand new thing. We don't understand what OpenStreetMap is. So we're very, very careful to try and disambiguate, to try and separate out what we do and how we do it in a very clear methodology that we have. We try and make sure that our brandings, although we're collaborating with each other, are clear so that we can direct people to the people with the best experience. OSM Africa is a great example of this, where OSM Africa have a huge push to do that, and Open Cities Africa involved with that. And you're getting some links there from Geoffrey.
Yeah, it came from Abusu Amapa's team. Just to add on what Rupert has just mentioned, of course, where there is like a high level of insecurity, where it's a challenge, one of the things that can be done first is the remote mapping. So if people cannot really go on ground to do ground mapping, you can start with remote mapping where people have access, to satellite imagery, and they can trace things like roads and buildings. So that's a very huge first step. And also, I've just shared some links to our wiki. If you want to replicate some of the our processes or look at our data model that we are using, you're free to take a look. And we're also available on social media. You can get in touch if you have like any questions and you want to get some help.
Just added to that, if you need any personal advice in terms of getting governments on board, what the capacity of OpenStreetMap in an informal setting is, and how you can negotiate the fact everyone can log in, and yet it wants to be something that the government and authorities can trust as well. It's a minefield in Uganda too, of how to get support from the right people institutionally, but give everybody the freedom that they deserve and expect from OSM, and indeed command automatically and can take that freedom. But freedom without a voice is no good. So that's another one of the agendas that I'm dealing with a lot, is how to get people to listen to the community from institutions. IDP camps and security. Geoffrey's sort of touched on that. One of the main things is to identify who the local either formal or informal networks are that are going to be the most safe for you, and do a lot of contextual research. I'm happy to respond to emails about that, so please do get in touch. We have a lot of our refugee camps are IDP camps that are now used as refugee camps, so we have a mixture. And we have our people such as Michael, who's been a refugee in one of those camps for a while and has some comparative contextual knowledge of what it is to feel secure in those environments. What else do we have on the program? I think we have a program. Have we covered everything? I could go on forever, but I feel as if I want to give some other people a chance to speak.
Yes, Geoffrey here. I just want to quickly just talk about our data cleaning process. Like, what tools do we really use to clean up our data? So just going back to one of the slides. So we do use ODK collect to collect data, and this is based on a data model that we created in partnership with UNHCR, basing on what their data needs were. We are collecting data on water points, data on health facilities, education facilities, and then cash-based interventions. So we created ODK forms from this that we use to collect our data. But when the data comes in on the server, we do download it and use different tools to clean it up So we are using OpenRefine, to sort issues with like data inconsistency, and then after that we put it into JOSM to check whether we don't have like any duplicates. So if we are adding a school and it's already existing in OSM, we just have to make sure that we are merging it with the existing data before we really push it. And then after that, we go into a process of quality assurance. So we are using a few tools here. We're using OSM Cha, which was developed by the Mapbox team. And then we're using Overpass, JOSM, and Quantum QGIS. So you can tell that most of the tools we are using, we're relying on open source. So the best way to really sell open data to people is also to show them that you can collect this data without spending a lot of money on things like, proprietary tools. So that's why we focus mainly on open source tools in doing our work. Yeah, and this is also merged within, the data that is created by the remote mappers from the tasking manager. So I'd really say thank you to whoever is on this webinar who has been contributing to our projects. I know we're having a lot of youth mappers on the call who have been contributing to our data mapping. So thank you so much. So basically that is the workflow, and that's how we try to put this data into OSM and then make products out of it using QGIS to make static maps, paper maps that we give out to communities, but also web maps for people who want to look at this data online. So that's a little bit about our working process.
Yeah, we just, I don't know if we've answered, Ken, all your questions there around IDP camps. As I say, we can go into more detail with that. We experience, because of Uganda having such a lot of women and children, we experience a lot of SGBV, sexual gender-based violence. We also have issues between host community and refugee community, and we have land issues as well. Land has been given to refugees in this environment, and sometimes the deals that have been done have not been very solid. We have returnees coming back to the settlements saying, my grandfather is buried here, and maybe a refugee might be standing there saying, well, my grandfather also is now buried here because we've been here for many years. So there are a lot of conflicts around that, and we see OpenStreetMap as a tool by which, if everybody engages, some of these conflicts can get resolved amongst community participants. So we're really trying to address that as much as we can, and pushing for more work with organizations to do with livelihoods and rights, civil rights to do with communities, and also, as I mentioned, land ministry. So yeah, we do encounter that a lot, and it would be good to hear more about that setting and what the parallels are. So
yeah, I think someone, Brian, has a hand up. Brian, would you like to ask a question? You can go off mute if that was the case. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm using a tablet and I can't figure out a way to type in my question. So I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, fabulous. You mentioned the health clinics in Uganda, and I may have missed this. Have all the health clinics, or pretty much all the health clinics, been mapped? Or the last list I saw only had about 1,000.
Yeah.
And that was a while ago.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brian. Yeah, so no is the quick answer. We don't believe so. What we've done in our project here is we've mapped every single health facility, including traditional healers and large hospitals in our given regions that we've had funding to do. And we've been campaigning kind of tirelessly to get funding to complete all of the refugee hosting districts in Uganda. Now, there are other organizations involved in health center mapping, UBOS being one of them. We've been helping them to upgrade and update their data so that they have 1 or 2 people dedicated to trying to improve that health center data. We also have healthsites.io, who are sort of peripherally, connected with us, and we try to keep communications and data flow going with them as far as we can. Given, as I said at the beginning, that our project started as a pilot and we've survived on the funding as pilot funding and done this large intervention, we have so many possibilities in Uganda to do this stuff that it's frustrating that we just don't have enough people and capacitation to follow through quickly enough. But we're trying to use every intervention we can. My latest strategy, not really a strategy, but an obvious choice, is to be involved in Ebola, because that's where we kind of come out of, Ebola response in many ways, and particularly my background. So this gives us an opportunity to survey properly and accurately and leave survey capacitation to keep reporting in every health centre, in every district along the border. And the Red Cross are also interested in this, and we have partnership, of course, across Missing Maps with Red Cross, and we have a local partnership with them. So the answer is no, but the intention is very, very much there. With something, I don't even know what the percentages are, Brian, because we don't know what we don't know. Right. Certainly in Arua and Yumbe, we have added a considerable, I would say, off the top of my head, 30%. Possibly of health facilities overall, informal and formal, onto what the Ministry of Health knew there was there. So that's the kind of situation we're in, and we expect that that would be the case, perhaps even less in the districts that haven't had refugee.
Right. If you can, email me, and we have a big list. Don't have coordinates on them. I keep begging them to put them.
In other areas, more so.
And I gave them a plan to do it, and maybe we could get something going. Yeah, it's frustrating. Okay. It's very important, but if you email me, maybe we can figure something out.
Perfect. That'd be wonderful. Thanks, Brian.
Can you do you have access to my emails through? Either through HR.
Well, quickly, while we're on the line, if you can do it very fast, that would be wonderful.
Okay. B as in boy, S as in Sam, AYER, just like the B Sayer, at S as in Sam -3.com.
I have Bravo, Sierra, Alpha, Yankee, Echo, Romeo at Sierra-3.com.
You got it.
Thank you, Brian.
You're quite welcome. Hope we can do something.
Brilliant. I think we could possibly talk about a couple of the projects that we're going into as well. That is one of them, the Ebola mapping project that we have ready to go and looking for the funding. It's been approved by the Emergency Operational Committee, but until there's an outbreak, we don't have the funding flooding in. So it's very frustrating. Once we're on the ground, of course, it will go very quickly, but if we hit the ground after the outbreak, it will really obstruct. So the whole point is to be prepared, but it's a chicken and egg scenario where if we could only do it beforehand, we could do it more quickly and safely and have the community prepared. But these are the mechanics of humanitarian intervention. The other project that we have is going back into Arua with the United Nations Development Programme and the Office of the Prime Minister, and doing an in-depth risk atlas of that area. No one's ever done a risk atlas of high resolution where we know every single household, and we can do an estimate of population and proximity to services and look at hazards which are there. So having a national hazard layer in the National Risk Atlas, which is informed by OpenStreetMap and directly informed by mappers, remote mappers' contributions, that is one of our main selling points, is we know every single house. And that is thanks to everybody remote who can give us the trust that they've got every single house, and we can do some serious metrics, and no one's been able to do that before. The other thing that we've got, of course, is the data that we've got, and the people like Harriet and Diane and all the others who've been, and Michael and our other field mappers who know the area and know the people to ask about those particular hazards. So that's a really exciting project that we're doing. The other thing that we have hopefully in the pipeline is working with what used to be called Handicap International. This is now called Humanity and Inclusion, working with people who have disabilities and who can basically focus on remote mapping, but also getting around and mapping, field mapping from the point of view of somebody with a disability, what the priorities are from that, through that lens. And so giving a kind of an alternative slant that isn't that UNHCR data model, but gives a data model or a feedback that actually has to do with people who have specific needs. So we've got 2 minutes left. I feel a bit like we should have one more person, but I'm going to stop now.
Perfect. I guess with 2 minutes left then, are there any last questions from anyone that they wanted to either come off mute or jump in the chat? Or anyone else from the Uganda team who had any kind of closing comment or what they wanted to say?
Maybe.
This is
hi everyone. I
Shamila.
didn't get to share anything, but my team has done a great job. I'd just like to thank you all for coming through and attending our webinar, and we hope you've learned a bit about our projects, and yeah, we hope to see you in the next one because we have to share the knowledge with you guys.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Shamila. Anyone else who had any final question or thing they wanted to say?
Does anyone have anything here from our guys who wants to say anything to the outside world? Okay, so I think that it's great. I just wanted to say something about the team and how I kind of mentioned earlier on how brilliant they have been over this year, including I've been here for 1.25 years, and I just feel like we've covered some very, very significant ground. It's brilliant to be here in this situation where I'm in the midst of a solid team with all of these guys from communities who 1.5 years ago had no idea what on earth mapping or anything like that was, and now they've turned into real specialists with some very, very important experience that can be shared. So I kind of want to thank the team as well. And so I hope that everybody on this webinar keeps in touch with us and let us know if you want any questions answered or support, and find us on Twitter. Huh?
I was going to say that. Following us on all our social media platforms.
Please do follow us on our social media platforms. That's hot_OSM_Uganda is the tag, and we have the Facebook page Hot OSM Uganda as well. And yeah, we've got links there to all sorts of stuff, so you can get us there, and that's probably the most active part of our resource. If you want in on any of the field surveying or field mapping WhatsApp channels, then that also might be possible in small doses. So that is also a way of watching what's going on. But we have to have individual discrete requests to do that, and we talk to you about that first. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect, great. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining. As asked, then the recording will be shared to everyone who signed up via the Eventbrite. So if you haven't signed up on there, then make sure to do so you can grab the recording. And as everyone said, please stay in touch with the Uganda team, and the community working group is working to arrange a monthly webinar throughout the entire rest of the year. So if you'd like to present on any work that you're doing, or if you would like to suggest any topics that you'd like to hear about. I'm just dropping my email in here now. It's rebecca.firth@hotosm.org. Please send me an email because we'd love to feature the work of other people in the community. So thanks very much, everyone. And thanks again to the Uganda team for their time to share their work with us. And we'll speak to you guys again next month. Okay, bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.